If you have ever been a woman who was told to just be grateful he chose you, who swallowed your pride because you had kids to protect and no money to fall back on, this one is for you. My name is Daniela Marisol Reyes. I'm 36 now, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the sunsets look like they're bleeding into the mountains. But 5 years ago, I was sitting on the cracked tile floor of a rental duplex in Albuquerque, holding a shutoff notice in one hand and my 2-year-old on my hip, realizing my husband had drained our savings and left. And not in a dramatic, screaming, door-slamming way. In a, I think I need space way, which somehow hurt worse. I grew up in a tight-knit Hispanic family, where the women are strong but quiet about it. There's this unspoken tradition. You hold your family together no matter what. You don't air dirty laundry. You don't embarrass your husband. And you absolutely do not fail at marriage. My abuela used to say, a woman's strength is proven by what she tolerates. I believed that. So when Rafael started controlling little things, how much I spent on groceries, whether I really needed to go back to work after our second baby, I told myself that was just marriage. When he insisted his name be the only one on our main savings account because he was better with I let it slide. I was a mechanical engineer. I had graduated top of my class at the University of New Mexico. I designed HVAC systems for commercial buildings, big, complicated projects that required precision and foresight. But at home, I deferred, because tradition said a good wife supports, and because I loved him. The night he left, it smelled like burnt tortillas because I'd forgotten them on the stove. Well, Madeo was crying, and Sofia had spilled apple juice everywhere. Rafael stood in the doorway with a duffel bag. I can't do this anymore, Danny. I feel trapped. Trapped. I looked around at the toys on the floor, the sticky counter, the life we built. We're just tired, I said. It's a phase. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just said, I've already moved the money. I'll send something when I can. And then he walked out. The next morning, I logged into our savings account. 0. Not low, 0. He had transferred every dollar from the account where we'd been saving for a down payment on a house. Every bonus I'd contributed before going part-time after Sophia was born, gone. I remember sitting there thinking, okay, cry for 5 minutes, then move. Have you ever had a moment where your entire life collapses in silence, and you realize no one is coming to fix it? Drop a comment if you know that exact feeling. That week, I called my supervisor and begged for my full-time position back. I picked up contract drafting work at night after the kids were asleep. I sold my engagement ring. Not because I wanted to erase him, but because daycare doesn't accept heartbreak as payment. And then there was my niece, Camila. Camila is my older sister Isabella's daughter. She was 10 when Rafael left. Big brown eyes, braces too big for her mouth, always sketching in a little spiral notebook. The first time she came over after he left, she walked into my half-empty living room, we'd already sold the couch, and said, Tia Dani, did you do something to make Tio Rafa leave? I swear that question hit harder than the bank account. No, mija, I said gently. Sometimes adults make selfish choices. She frowned. Mom says marriage is forever, unless the wife gives up. Unless the wife gives up. I smiled, but inside, something cracked. Years passed in exhaustion. I woke up at 5 a.m. to review schematics before getting the kids ready. I packed lunches that smelled like peanut butter and warm tortillas. I learned to fix leaky faucets myself. I built spreadsheets tracking every dollar. Slowly, I started taking on independent contracts, small commercial retrofits, then bigger ones. I noticed something. Clients liked me. They trusted me. I was thorough, calm, unshakable under pressure. Unlike the woman who had once cried in a pantry because her husband criticized how she folded towels. By year 3, I registered my own firm, Reyes Thermal Design LLC. It was terrifying. Signing that paperwork felt like stepping onto a tightrope without a net. But I had already survived worse. The second time Camila's role in my story deepened, she was 13. She came over after school, quieter than usual. I was reviewing load calculations at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun making everything golden. Tia, she said softly, Mom says I shouldn't focus too much on math because boys don't reveals who act smarter than them. I froze. Camila loved math. She loved figuring out how things worked. She once dismantled a toaster just to see the coils. What do you think? I asked her. She shrugged. I don't want to end up alone. There it was. The inheritance. Not money. Fear. Have you ever noticed how the women in our families pass down survival strategies that are really just smaller versions of their own cages? That night, after she left, I sat in my tiny home office, staring at the framed copy of my LLC registration. I realized building a company wasn't just about paying bills. It was about breaking something. By year 5, Reyes Thermal Design wasn't tiny anymore. We had contracts across the Southwest, schools, medical offices, a boutique hotel in Sedona. I hired 3 full-time engineers, 2 of them women fresh out of college. I bought a modest office building in Santa Fe. Exposed brick, big windows. It smelled like sawdust and fresh paint the day we moved in. And then Raphael emailed me. Subject line, long time. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. He wrote that he'd heard about my little business. He said he was starting a development project but was temporarily tight on liquidity. He asked if my company would consider a private loan. We can keep it between us, he added. I laughed. Actually laughed. 5 years ago, he left me with 2 babies and 0 savings. Now he wanted to borrow money from the company I built from scratch. Tell me, would you have ignored the email, or would you have answered? Be honest. I didn't respond right away, because the third and final shift came through Camila. She was 16 now. Taller than me, confident in this almost fragile way teenage girls are. She came to my office one Saturday while I was finalizing a proposal. She walked slowly around the space, touching the drafting tables, the framed project photos. Tia, Dad says you're lucky Rafa left, that you wouldn't have made all this if he'd stayed. I felt heat rise in my chest. He says sometimes men have to push women to grow. There it was again, the rewriting of history. The myth that our pain was a gift from the men who caused it. Camila looked at me carefully. Is that true? And in her eyes, I saw 10-year-old Camila asking if I had made my husband leave. I saw 13-year-old Camila shrinking her intelligence. This was the moment. Have you ever realized that staying silent doesn't just protect you? It teaches the next girl to accept less? I turned to her. No, mija. I grew because I chose to. Not because he abandoned us. And no one gets credit for hurting you. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. That night, I emailed Raphael back. I told him Reyes Thermal Design would consider a loan request, formally. He could come to my office Monday at 10 a.m. and present his proposal to our executive team. He agreed. Monday morning, the office smelled like dark roast coffee and printer ink. My team sat around the conference table. Amara, Jess, and Colin. Glass walls. Bright desert light pouring in. Raphael walked in wearing a navy blazer. That same easy smile. Donnie, he said softly. Mr. Ortega, I replied, gesturing to a chair. The meeting stretched for nearly 2 hours. He presented glossy renderings for a mixed-use development in Phoenix. He spoke confidently, like he always had. But here's what was different. I wasn't the woman trying to keep peace. I was the owner, reviewing risk. I asked about his liquidity ratios, his collateral, his prior project delays. Each question calm, precise. He faltered when I brought up his personal bankruptcy filing from 2 years earlier. Public. Record. You did your homework, he muttered. I always do, I said evenly. Finally, I folded my hands. Reyes Thermal Design does not issue unsecured personal loans. However, I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a proposal. We would not loan him money. We would acquire 60% equity in his development project in exchange for full funding and oversight. My company would control financial decisions, contractor selection, and timeline enforcement. In other words, if he wanted my money, he would work under my structure. His jaw tightened. That's excessive. It's standard risk mitigation, I said calmly. Silence filled the room. The hum of the AC. A car passing outside. You'd really take control? He asked quietly. I held his gaze. I'd ensure stability. He knew what that word meant. He looked around at my team. 3 professionals waiting on my decision. He looked at the glass walls, the framed certifications. My name etched on the frosted door outside. Daniela M. Reyes, founder and principal engineer. 5 years ago, he took everything liquid I had. Now I was offering him a deal he couldn't twist. He swallowed. I'll need to think about it. Of course, I said. He stood to leave, then paused. You've changed. I shook my head gently. No. I stopped shrinking. He didn't take the deal. 2 months later, I heard his project fell through. And here's the thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. That Sunday, I hosted dinner. My parents, my sister, the kids, and Camila. The table was crowded with enchiladas, cilantro, warm tortillas wrapped in cloth, laughter bouncing off the walls. Camila pulled me aside on the patio as the sky turned pink. I applied to a summer engineering program, she said. I didn't tell Mom yet. I smiled. Why not? She squared her shoulders. Because I don't need permission to be ambitious. I swear, I almost cried. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood in my living room holding something small. The original shutoff notice from 5 years ago. I had kept it. Folded, worn at the edges. Not as a wound, as proof. I walked to the fireplace and let the paper catch flame. It curled, blackened, turned to ash. That notice once symbolized humiliation, powerlessness. Now it was just paper. Here's what I've learned, sitting here with you like it's 1 a.m., and we're whispering truths. Revenge isn't loud. It isn't screaming or slamming doors. It's building something so stable that the person who broke you has to knock politely at your glass door. And sometimes, you don't even let them in. If this story felt a little too familiar, if you're in the middle of your zero savings, floor-sitting moment right now, please know this is not your ending. Subscribe to Her Untold Revenge, because we tell the stories women are usually told to keep quiet. And share this with a woman who needs to remember, we don't grow because they leave. We grow because we decide to.